What just happened?
Here, I'm not going to turn that on, okay?
All right.
Hey, Pastor Chris. Lola, what are you barking at?
Can we get that phone? Hey,
Justice for all.
Hi.
hello.
Hello.
Let me turn the volume up a little bit. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Do you see the Justice for All logo anywhere?
Yes.
You
Yes.
do. Perfect. Okay. This is my first time, guys, doing anything like this. So I did a trial run earlier. Hopefully it goes well. You guys, even Caroline, I'm sure you are way more adept at this than I am. Okay. So I may have to ask you for some help. I'm going to start just a 5-minute countdown to give some people a few minutes to come on in. Sometimes, logging in with the password and technology has its own ways of delaying things. Did you guys go out and make snow angels?
No, we showed.
Snowman? Nothing like that? Snowball fight?
It was kind of wet and slushy. It wasn't.
Yeah,
You just stayed inside in the warm, huh?
It's more slushy out.
We made disgusting snow cream.
Snow Prince?
No, snow cream.
Disgusting.
Hmm.
Mom, could you sign in?
Come over here.
Mom, get over here. I'm scared. Mom, could you sign in?
Oh, no, I don't have your information there.
This is usually the time that I will remind you guys to go to the bathroom and to get a drink and to kind of, get all those things that might come up in the middle of the service out of the way. So if you need to walk and stretch, if you need to go to the bathroom or get a drink, you can do that now. Christian, you want to tilt the, can you tilt it a little more down just so your face isn't cut off? Yeah. It's hard, but that's the reason why it stays. That's better. Yeah. Or maybe just scoot forward a little bit or sit up straight. Ah. Stop slouching. These are the days when I am really thankful for a snowblower. Never had one until I guess maybe last year or a couple years ago. So I've always been busting my back shoveling snow through intense winters in Michigan, and finally got a snowblower, and it is, man, when you need it, it's clincher, man. It comes in handy. Two minutes and we'll get started.
Who's going to be here? Like,
I don't know. I was thinking we'd at least see Landon, maybe Eli, Jacob and Avery. I don't know. Jonathan, we'll see. Even if it's just us, we're still going to have a good time, right? Still learn about Jesus. I wish I was thinking about trying to do some games, some like screen games, but that was kind of too much last minute. And I'm limited to a 40-minute Zoom call. So we have to kind of move the thing along a little bit. So we might have just a little less interaction than we normally do, just because once 40 minutes comes along, they cut me off.
Yeah, and here's Landon.
Landon made it.
You can't see him right now, but
We've got 20 seconds. Whoa, fancy lights. Hey there. Look at that. Oh man, I want that in my room. That's cool. All right, guys, lean back, stretch, stand on up if you want. We're gonna
muted again.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Good. What a powerful reminder, huh? There's nothing that our God cannot do. How amazing our God is. This is the beginning of a brand new series called Justice for All. And when you hear that phrase, justice for all, what comes to mind? What do you guys think of? Yeah, Christian.
For some reason, like superheroes.
Okay. Probably thinking of like Justice League. That's DC Universe. Caroline, anything come to mind when you hear the phrase justice for all?
The Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, for sure, right? How's it end? With liberty and justice for all. Something you might think of too is like Judge Judy, right? If you guys ever watch any of those kind of daytime shows like that?
No,
No?
not at all.
We have the American flag there. There's a lot of different judge shows out there, but they're kind of fun to watch. So we think of a lot of these kinds of things, and it makes sense when we think about justice. But we'll come back to the idea of justice in just a minute. For now, let's talk about love, because Valentine's Day is right around the corner, right? So let's talk a little bit about love. I want you to start thinking of some maybe love stories that you've heard, whether it's in a book or a movie or a TV show. I want to know what's something extreme that one of those characters did for love. Anybody think of anything? I know love stories aren't maybe what you spend a lot of your time, going over. Romeo and Juliet's a classic, right? If you don't know about that, you can ask your parents. But Romeo and Juliet is a classic love story. When I was younger, they came out with a big epic movie about Titanic. And that was kind of the love story of my youth. As I got older, there was another movie came out called The Notebook. And all of those are pretty good examples of, what we would call like a modern day romance kind of a thing. But so let's move. Let me try and make this a little more applicable to you guys. Let's talk about the Avengers. All right. I know that many of you have seen something like this movie with the Avengers. And in the Avengers, as a part of the Avengers, there is a group of characters. They have their own storyline, but they're part of the Avengers called the Guardians of the Galaxy. Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. Just so I can see, right? You guys know this? All right. Chris Pratt plays one of the main characters there in the middle. He goes by the name Sky-Lord, and he makes all kinds of friends, which you see in the picture. There's Rocket Raccoon, there's Groot, Drax, but he falls in love with a girl named Gamora. She's the green one there on the right side. And he would do anything for her, moving across galaxies, right? Even risking his very own life for her, which he inevitably has to do because Gamora is actually kind of the daughter of another character named Thanos. Everyone know who I'm talking about, right? He's the bad guy in this series. Thanos wants to acquire all of the Infinity Stones so that he can complete the Infinity Gauntlet, making him ultra powerful, right? The most powerful guy in the universe. And there's a point in the story when Thanos has to make a very difficult decision. Okay, so we can see it kind of here, right? There's Gamora in the foreground, and Thanos is looking over his daughter. And in order to obtain the Soul Stone, one of the Infinity Stones, he needs to make a sacrifice. So Thanos has to sacrifice his daughter, Gamora, who he really does love. And so is he going to do it? Well, yes, he is going to do it because he's evil. He's the bad guy, right? And because ultimately he loves the Infinity Stone and its power more than he loves his own daughter. But it does grieve him. He is sad because of this. We see a tear roll down his cheek. But it just goes to show that sometimes we do crazy, ridiculous things for love, whether it's the love of a person or even the love of things. And in other words, what I'm trying to say is that love isn't just an emotion that you feel or a word that you say. It is something that you do, right? It is something that you demonstrate. Love is an action. DC Talk, an old band from my day, put out a song called Love is a Verb, right? It's something that you do. And because love is such a powerful thing, when it doesn't go as planned, it's really easy to get frustrated or angry or upset. And in fact, sometimes when someone hurts you, you might actually want to hurt them back. And I get it, right? Like we've all been there. When we get hurt, whether it's physically or emotionally, we want revenge. We want consequences. We want justice, right? Now, we've already talked a little bit about love. Now let's talk about justice. Can anyone tell me what justice means in their own words? Go ahead, Christian.
It means like free of something. Justice is, I guess, getting what you want in
On the right track, I think. Anyone help him? Landon? No. Justice is tricky. Some people think of it as a punishment, right? Like it's what happens when you're caught. When you're doing something wrong, you get caught and therefore you go to jail or you go to prison or there's a fine that you have to pay. Some people will think of it as revenge, like we kind of talked about. If you've ever heard the saying, an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, what's that saying? It's like, if you do something to hurt me, I'm going to do the same thing or worse to you, right? It's talking about revenge. I think nowadays, people might even describe justice as a trend, right? That justice is a term that gets thrown around in politics during certain seasons or on social media posts. So people might describe it that way. But just like love, sometimes our own desire for justice is well-intentioned. Sometimes it's misguided. And sometimes, probably a lot of times, it's a little bit of both, right? And so when we realize that our idea of justice is only about revenge, there's a good chance that we're getting some things wrong here, right? So there's another saying that goes along with the one I just mentioned, an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. It goes like this: an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. You understand what that means? That if you hurt my eye and I say, that's it, I'm going to hurt your eye, and I pluck out your eye, and then you say, well, I'm going to pluck out your other eye, and you pluck out my other eye, and then I blindly attack you to get your other eye. Eventually, it's just a vicious circle. It goes around and around. You hurt me, I hurt you. You hurt me, I hurt you. And it never stops. It becomes this vicious cycle of hurt and pain that just never ends. So what's the alternative? What are we to do when something unjust happens to us? I mean, is it possible that getting justice is about more than just punishing people who've hurt us? And if so, how do we balance things, right? How do we balance loving and forgiving somebody with standing up for ourselves so we don't just get walked all over? And that's what we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks. We're going to be talking about what God says justice is and what it isn't. And we'll see that justice and love have to do a lot with each other. And the way we're going to do this is by taking a look at a family from the Old Testament. And this family experienced a lot of injustice themselves, but they also carried out a lot of unspeakable justice against others. Okay, and so at the center of the story that we're looking at is a guy named Joseph. Joseph is the second youngest sibling in a family with 11 brothers. Okay, so he's one of the youngest brothers. And the Bible seems to suggest that Joseph was kind of a tattletale, right? Like his dad often asked him to keep an eye out on his older brothers, knowing that he would just tell on them anytime he got the chance. And by the way, Joseph's older brothers were actually his half brothers. Okay, so Joseph grew up in what we call today a blended family, two separate families coming together to form one. And so Joseph and his younger brother Benjamin had a different mother than his older brothers. And so that alone created some serious sibling rivalry in their family. And Joseph's brothers were convinced that their father, Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of them. And guess what, guys? They're kind of right. Jacob, their dad, showed a lot of favoritism toward Joseph, and it actually created this kind of us versus them mentality in their family. And so there's already tension, there's already jealousy in the family. And then Jacob, the dad, makes it even worse by giving Joseph this custom-made, like super fancy coat, right? And so it'd be like if you imagine your parents, bought your little brother or sister like some Air Jordans or something really fancy, high end, and then they took you to Kmart and got you some little like knockoff brand thing, right? And so this gift from their dad created even more jealousy. It made it even more difficult and created kind of an even bigger mess in their family. And deep down, we all want to be part of a family or a friend group where there's love, right? We want to be accepted for who we are without judgment and favoritism. But Jacob didn't do that. He allowed his personal preferences to impact how he actually loved his children. And so many people believe that Jacob preferred Joseph because he liked his new wife better. He liked Joseph's birth mother better than the mother of his other children. And there's a possibility that you may be familiar with this if you grew up in a blended family, or maybe your friends have grew up in a blended family and they've experienced something like this where they feel like they're being treated unfairly just because of who they are or the person that they came from, the background that they have in another family. Whatever the reason, Joseph's dad created this very unhealthy family dynamic. But to be honest, the thing is, Joseph did not help the situation at all. Okay. All he does, whether he realizes it or not, is just add fuel to the fire. And it only makes the situation even worse. So I want to read with you how this goes. In Genesis 37, verses 2 through 11, we read this. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And he brought their father a bad report about them, right? So here he is tattling, okay? Now Israel, this is speaking of Jacob, he loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him, or a coat for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him, and they could not speak a kind word to him. So Joseph has a dream. And when he told his brothers about his dream, they hated him even more. Why? Well, he said, listen to this. Listen to this dream I had. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not going through the slides here. He said, listen to this. Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. Okay, so in Joseph's dreams, God reveals something, and he reveals some really important things. But do you see what Joseph did? He kind of flexes on his brothers a little bit, right? He's like, oh man, someday you all are gonna bow down to me. Isn't that crazy? And it was true. I mean, God was speaking to Joseph through his dreams, and God showed Joseph the future, that one day he would be in a position of power and authority over his brothers. But that wasn't the problem. In other words, the problem wasn't that Joseph had this dream in the first place. It was that Joseph bragged about it, right? He bragged about the dreams and the visions he was having. And the way that he then shared those dreams with his brothers, it really lacked love, didn't it? Now, we sort of defined love a few minutes ago, but let's see if we can define it just a little more clearly with the help of the Bible, okay? In the New Testament, a long time after Joseph and his brothers lived, a guy named Paul wrote a letter to the church in Corinth. And in that letter, he gives us a definition of what love is. So let's read this together. He says, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, if I have a faith that can move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to the hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Now, that last part there is often read at weddings, right? So you may be familiar with it, you maybe heard it before. But according to this passage, Joseph was like a clanging cymbal to his brothers, right? They probably want to be like, ugh. And I mean, yeah, he could see the future, but without love, his dream only caused more problems. It upset his brothers. They actually grew to hate him. And as we'll see over the next few weeks, Joseph's lack of love in that moment, it sets off this chain of events. And ultimately, we'll see how over 2 decades of heartache, like over 20 years of pain, maybe could have been avoided if Joseph had just chosen a different approach with his family. And so let's have some fun with this. Have you ever done something wrong and then you wish you could go back in time and get a redo, like a do-over, right? You could do things differently. Anybody? Yeah. Sure. I mean, I think we all have, right? So let's think about this. What could Joseph have done differently? How could he have been a little more loving to his brothers? Anyone got any ideas? Yeah, Christian?
He maybe could have like respected them more.
Yeah, remember,
Made them
these are
feel
his
more
older brothers, right? Sure.
like made them feel more welcome.
Yeah, like he's not trying to
Like
overtake them. Landon, anything you thinking about?
He probably could have asked them what dreams they had and then just told them his dream.
Okay, yeah, make it a little more like innocent or inclusive. Like, hey, so tell me what you guys were dreaming about, and then be like, man, I had a crazy dream. What do you guys think about this? Sure.
Yeah.
Caroline, you have any thoughts over there? Are you still with us? No thoughts? Yeah, I think you guys are on the right track, right? So maybe he didn't have to say things right away. I think he was probably excited about it, you know, so that spurred him into moving quicker than maybe he should have. So maybe he was a little more patient. Maybe he just pumped the brakes a little bit and took some time to think about how he should respond. Maybe he could have handled it a little better. Definitely could have been more kind. Should not have been like bragging about it, right? So Christian not disrespecting or dishonoring his older brothers. Unfortunately, this is a lesson that Joseph had to learn the hard way, right? And that's unfortunate. His dad's favoritism had already created an imbalance in their family by showing favoritism to Joseph. Lana, did you have something to add? I just saw a hand go up on your thing. I didn't know if
No, I think it's Ben.
okay, maybe
I
that's
think
just a
it's
high
Ben
five.
up there.
I'll give you a high five.
I don't know how to get it off.
All right, that's fine. I don't either. I would help you. So yeah, he had to learn this lesson the hard way. And the thing about it is, remember, his dad already created this incredible imbalance in the family anyway by showing favoritism to Joseph. And then on top of that, Joseph is then arrogant and insensitive in the way that his brothers are hurting when he delivers this kind of news. So in this family, there is a lot of pain. There's a lot of hurt. And like we said, when someone is hurt, what do they want? Justice, right? They want revenge. They want somebody else to feel what they feel. But really what they want, they want what they think is fair. They want what they think is right. They want what they think is just, okay? But just remember that justice cannot be the same thing as revenge. They're not equal, because otherwise it just becomes that vicious cycle, right? That never-ending circle. You hurt me, I hurt you. You hurt me, I hurt you. And it never stops. And so what their family needed was not more vengeance or violence. What they needed was more love, but not the kind of love that's just spoken. It's not just saying it with your mouth, with your words. They needed love that communicated their love through actions, just like Paul described in Corinthians. Because justice isn't revenge. Justice is love in action. Okay, and that's our big idea for this week, that justice is love in action. You may not have 11 brothers who hate you like Joseph did, but I know that you know what it's like to hurt or to be hurt by others. And the thing is that in those moments, it's easier to act unjust than it is to act with love, right? So think about yourself, think about your relationships, and think about it if maybe you're acting a little bit like Joseph, where you're creating conflicts with others because of a lack of love. And if so, in what ways could you choose love instead of revenge? What ways could you choose humility instead of pride? What ways could you choose kindness instead of cruelty? Think about your community, right? The place where you live. Even if you didn't cause a problem there, how can you put love into action in order to help solve a problem? How can you show love or meet needs in some way in your school or in your neighborhood? Or think about even in the world, right? In Joseph's family, his father's favoritism and brokenness caused a lot of conflict and division in the family between Joseph and his brothers. And when you look around in the world around you, you see a lot of conflict and division there too, right? So this is not an isolated incident within the Bible. This is still happening all around. And so one of the reasons that we're talking about justice this month is because February is Black History Month. So throughout history, there have been leaders who've had dreams for the world, just like Joseph had a dream. But these dreams were rooted in God's justice, in God's love, especially when hatred and division were more commonplace. So for example, in the United States, in the 1950s and 1960s, there was a historic movement that fought against racial injustice. And in that time, many voices rose up to address the racial divisions in America and call for love and justice together instead of hatred. And probably the most famous of these voices was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was a pastor who had a God-given dream, just like Joseph, except he knew how to share his dream in love, not in a way that was arrogant or self-serving. So I want you to take just a short look at this clip, and I think you'll see what I mean here.
Dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths
We can't see it.
evident that all men
Can you
are
hear it?
created equal.
Okay.
That one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream.
All right. So Dr. Martin Luther King's dream inspired others to fight for justice. How? By turning their love for others into action. So I just want to ask you, what's your dream? Where do you want to see more love and less hatred? Because you don't have to wait for God to speak to you in your sleep. You can start dreaming dreams now. Just think about what might happen if you took the time to write a kind note to someone who you didn't always agree with, or to find common ground with someone who you seems a little more different than you. Maybe go grocery shopping for an elderly person in your neighborhood, or think about this, doing something nice for your brother or sister just because, right? Like no strings attached, no expectations for anything in return, just because you want to demonstrate love to them. In Joseph's story, God gave him a miraculous and prophetic dream. And I want you to understand that the dream itself was not bad. It was good. It was just that Joseph selfishly mishandled that dream. And because it was actually a dream that was rooted in love and justice, he just missed it. And so in the next few weeks, we'll discover more about what Joseph's dream meant. But for now, I want you to remember that justice is love in action. Justice is love in action. And then keep asking yourself this question. If justice is love in action, then how can my actions demonstrate more of God's love? All right. So think about those things with me. Thanks for coming in with the crazy weather, guys. We have 1 minute to pray. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for the ability to gather together on Zoom during crazy weather. I pray you keep us all safe as the snow falls and we may be traveling in the next few days. But help us understand your justice, not the way the world sees justice, but the way that you describe justice in the Bible. May we represent you well and demonstrate your love in our actions in the way that we live every day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you on Sunday.
created by the creator to be unified, but we fighting for superiority, keeping us blind. Adding division, rejecting the equal design. We all bleed the same blood, and that's clearly defined. I waited to say something, but I'm feeling this time I might lose a few followers, but really it's fine. Misunderstanding each other, leaving us confused. We gotta hear each other's stories, so that's what we gon' do. Because you never been through the struggle, don't mean it ain't true. That doesn't mean it don't exist if you ain't fitting the shoe. So can you take some time to hear our pain and don't try to fight it? Living so oppressed, so we can't remain quiet. I got fam that's privileged and fam that's oppressed, and I'm depending on Jesus to help us out this mess. We show